Hello, everybody. So as you can see by my title slide, we're not talking about Wireshark today. Well, we are, but not from the TCP learning series. So you can tell that I'm going to have multiple types of videos coming out. And this key slide that you see, or the thumbnail that you see, will be consistent. So when you see this stairs going up, resembles moving on up like the Jeffersons, that's going to be more of a vlog, more of my advice to people who've asked these types of questions. So if you're looking for packet traces and TCP specifically, you're dismissed, because I'll be yammering and talking about how I got started, how you can get started, my advice as an industry veteran on how to get better, break into the field, what's required, what's the expectation, etc. All right, so yeah, I get this question a lot. In addition to maybe number one, number two is, what books do I read? How do I get better? But maybe the number one thing is, what the hell is this trace telling me? I think Chris and Carrie during Carrie's live stream mentioned that sometimes it's like a cooking show. What you see is a finished product, magical souffle that didn't take, hours and hours to bake. I don't know if it takes hours and hours to bake a souffle. I'm just making that up. And so I thought I'd start by my background a little bit, because I think it always helps to know the person giving advice, how they came into the field, and what their, CV is to talk about that particular field. So many, many years ago, I mentioned earlier in my webinar that I started at university. It was a great, awesome place to learn, and it is. And I wanted to impart some industry trends at the time, my expectations, and how I kind of moved up in my career as I got older and heavier, maybe 25 pounds ago, as I like to say. And started with getting that networking experience from the university. At the time, Novell NetWare was very, very hot. And so I got interested in it, obviously, because it's network operating system. And I started working for a company called Infinisys out of Phoenix. And my boss named Rick, I won't use his last name, but gave me a shot and hired me. And there was one incident that seared in my brain. I was actually very good at taking care of Novell NetWare networks. From experience, reading a lot. At the time, Novell had these things called app notes, kind of like the IP journal from Cisco. Very technical, it was very dense in terms of technical material. No Google back then, a lot of reading, magazines, industry Bibles, RFCs, spending time on Usenet, etc. So I showed up at a customer site because normally you're assigned a couple of accounts. And it wasn't my account, but the person who was handling that account was on vacation. So I took over, I showed up, and the bank manager there turned out to be the daughter of the owner of the bank, I believe it was. And, said, oh, so-and-so is on vacation, and I'm here to take a look at your server. And she goes, oh, okay, awesome. So you're a you're a CNE too. And that was Certified Novell Expert, Certified NetWare Expert. I'm not sure, one of those two. Or a Certified Novell Engineer, I believe was the term. Anyway, CNE. It was kind of an industry well-known standard at the time. And I said, oh no, but, and I wanted to say, I have, many, many years of experience. I never got to say that because she immediately cut me off and said, oh no, we require only CNEs work on our servers. And truth be told, I was a little heated because I was actually better than the person that was assigned to this account, I thought. But the customer is always right. So I said, okay, no problem. We'll get somebody else out here. And I called and I kind of ranted and raved. And my boss said, well, why don't you get certified? And I said, that's a lot of money. What is it for? And he said, no, we pay for the test. And I was like, oh, okay. And as it turns out, certification versus education has been a debate that's been long raging in this field, especially in technology in particular, because there was no real professional certification like professional engineer, right? Or, the precursor to that, engineering and training, EIT, that kind of stuff. Or CPA, for example, right? Where you have to mentor other CPAs for X number of years, you take the test, etc. Anybody could just go sign up at Prometric or whatever the equivalent of Prometric is these days, and you get a piece of paper. Upset, but then I found out that the company paid for it. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go knock this out, because if I claim to know it, why don't I get certified? And in a span of 5 days, so that was a Friday night, and I couldn't schedule the test on Saturday and Sunday because I had to have an account. I had to wait for those usual things. So Monday I signed up for a test. Tuesday I took 2 tests. Wednesday I think I took 2 tests. Thursday I think I took 1 test. It was 6 or 7 tests to be certified, and I just knocked it out in 4 days. And as karma would have it, that customer had another problem Friday afternoon. Remember, it was a 2-week vacation for the guy I was filling in for. So he was still on break. And I said, oh, please let me go. And I went there, and she was a little shocked and said, hey, I thought we made it clear that, only CNEs can work on it. Have no fear. I'm a CNE. And she was like, oh, okay, well then come on. And I was able to fix that problem. So I bring that up because it's not the certification that was important to me. It was the knowledge and the education. But how do you prove that? You can prove it to yourself. You can say maybe it's delusional, maybe it's real, but how do you tell the customer that you're an expert at something? Coworkers, it's easy. They see you working every day, but not to a customer, not to somebody you don't work with on a day-to-day basis. And therein lies the problem. And that's where certifications come in. And then it turned out that certifications are actually good for the vendors and not as much for the individual. So let me explain that, what I mean by that. So when you're an industry VAR, for example, you get discounts because these technology vendors want to make sure that they have credibly trained people working on their systems. Makes sense. But it wasn't OJT, on-the-job training. It wasn't experience. It was more certification-driven that allowed them to advertise, hey, we have X number of people certified to handle, so don't worry about service and support. As a VAR, you actually get a discount. You can be, the bronze, silver, gold, platinum partner. You get more discounts, you get more points, so you make more money. So it's win-win-win for the businesses. Individual, there's value because my saying is, if you think you're so knowledgeable, go prove it. There's no downside to having certification if you already have the experience. The converse is not true. Having certification without the experience doesn't make you that much better because you're lacking the foundation, which is the experience and education. But if you already have it, prove it. Take the test. Put your money where your mouth is. So that's kind of how I got started in terms of certification. I didn't really worry about any other certification. I got the MCSE, was it? Or MC, I don't know, the Microsoft equivalent of it, because again, I was interested. It was kind of the new thing that was happening, and I took care of that. And there was a couple of good workbooks and technical books that you could study from and take the test. And I had ample chance, being a systems administrator, network engineer, kind of, jack of all trades type of person, to be able to do that. Now, fast forward, getting into the network. So that was on the system side, the beginning side. It also turned out that back then you could actually get pretty detailed knowledge on a lot of things. Terminal servers was a big thing because everybody used dial-up. And it was a little bit, archaic. It's its command line setup was not the easiest thing in the world. Not hard by any means, but not user-friendly. There was no GUI. There's nothing. You just had to type in all the commands. But so did a router, right? So did a switch. So ended up, but it wasn't enough that I knew how to use a breakout box to make the maddeningly different DB9, DB25, RS-232 cables. So I actually bought a book on RS-232 standard, and I learned a lot. For example, I using voltmeter, I could tell whether you're DTE or DCE. And if these things mean nothing to you, don't worry about it. It's dead. No one cares. But again, the idea is that it's not enough to have this much knowledge, right? Have this much knowledge because you're that much better. So as an engineering student, I fundamentally understood how ground works and why, voltage is going up or down matters and how you can test these things with voltmeter. So there was a book on RS-232 that was outstanding. I learned a lot. And then I got into V.32, the actual standards of what it meant to be V.32 and whatnot from a modem perspective. So again, the idea is not for you to start learning this modem technology, ancient technology, but learn the foundational, then go the extra mile to learn a little bit deeper. And you have no excuse now. You have Google at your fingertips. But I want to caution you. Searching isn't learning. You can search anything and you can get an answer, but that's not learning. It's parroting what Google's telling you. And so that searching isn't learning. You have to understand that, right? You have to have that. You have to take the time to fundamentally understand what's going on. So some good news. It's easier to break into this field because you can specialize now. You don't need to know about this wide breadth of technology. You can focus on systems administration, even systems administration from a Linux-only perspective or Windows perspective. I guess that's really it, right? That's pretty much it. Or on the help desk side of things, generic IT manager, where you have to know a lot about, these various topics. There's security. Security is obviously hot, but security also requires experience, right? Because no one's going to hire you if you're a security expert and you've never done it before. So you do need some time in grade to be able to do this well. So the first thing is breaking into this field is see if you can get an internship somewhere, see if you can get tutored by a mentor, and read voraciously. If you don't like reading, get out. Go do something else, because if you don't like reading, if you don't like learning, you're in the wrong field. So I remember another thing that's, as an officer going through Officer Basic at Fort Benning, Georgia, the grader had a want ad on his wall next to, and as he was counseling you, talking to you, and I noticed that want ads, and it was highlighted in red, and it was for McDonald's worker. And this isn't belittling McDonald's worker. It's a valuable way for high school students to learn what it means to show up on time and work, etc. But his point, the captain's point was, if you can't cut it, go do that. There's plenty of jobs. And so either you're in it 100% or get out and do that. So that's what you need to be. You need to be a voracious reader. You have to have a fundamental curiosity about how things work. And you have to want to learn. And you have to want to challenge yourself by taking these tests. If you're an industry veteran, put up or shut up, okay? Take the test. So that's how it kind of my background. So in terms of breaking into this field, how do you break into this field? Get an internship, volunteer. Volunteering is a great way of learning things. Volunteer at your school. They need help with these projects. Volunteer at your church if you attend churches. Volunteer at a civic organization. If you know how to set up a Linksys or Netgear router, do that, because not too many people do. And learn about how channels and using 40-80 hertz signals is not a good thing when you have to have a lot of Wi-Fi because they collide. And collision is again back in contention at the original Ethernet. So learn about those things so that you can volunteer and get some experience. There's nothing like on-the-job training to teach you. And I don't care who you are or how much you've studied, until you've actually done it, you don't really know. You can read all the books there is, and that's, again, prep work, right? You can read about everything, and you're filing that away, putting it into your tool bag, because sooner or later you're going to have to reach in there and get that tool out. So that's why you have to read voraciously. That's why you have to learn. That's why you have to have fundamental curiosity and want to better yourself. Because at some point you're going to go, aha, that's what's happening. And I'll tell you a story in subsequent thing where we had a major problem. And we had a lot of engineers, Cisco engineers and Cisco developers on site. They flew in as this result of this problem. And I was able to solve it. Yes, using packets, but also because I remembered an article from a year ago, and as I sat there, I went, I think the thing that I read from a year ago, I think that's what's happening, and it turned out to be true. So again, if you don't read, you miss. If you don't have those in your tool bag, then you tend to miss. You have a blind spot. Okay, so volunteer and get mentored, and that's how you can break into this field. Pick a specialization. Like I said, you don't have to be everything to everybody now. So pick either networking, security, or systems administration. Those are the broad topics. Networking is a little bit more structured in that there's a definite progression, right? Let's face it, Cisco is dominant. All the other CLIs copy Cisco, for example. And so Cisco is a great place to start. They're a great company. They make great gear. So get into that, okay? And I will say that of all the certifications that I've whether there was certified network expert, certified sniffer expert, I think what it was called. CNX was one, so certified network expert, kind of generic networking expert test that some consortium made. Took that. Certified sniffer associate and professional, I think, were the other two. There's a couple others along the way. But the CCIE one was the hardest and the most interesting for me because the 2-day hands-on test was a challenge.